Welcome to everybody who's joining us here for Penn's first evening back to school presentation. Tonight we have Craig Knippenberg with Wired and Connected, Hijacked. What happens with your kids when they are playing video games and social media? You are in for a treat. So we will give you a minute to grab your water, your tea, your popcorn, if you've got kids here. And there is also a poll. If you would be kind enough to answer a few questions just about what the age of your kid is and what school you are attending. That would give us great information for all the programs we have for this year for you. So you can do that without too much brain loss. All righty. Before Craig goes on, we have an important message from Cherry Creek School District. So I'd like to introduce to you the president of the Cherry Creek School District Board of Education, Karen Fisher. Karen's going to share with you the latest update on the school district and what you might be able to do to help ensure that our schools stay at the excellent level that they're at. Karen, take it away.
Thank you, Susu. Thank you all for having me tonight. My name is Karen Fisher. As you all know, because of COVID, the state made pretty significant cuts to not just our school district, but all the school districts in Colorado. Our reduction this year was about $25 million, and we've been told to expect up to 33 million, actually at least 33 million next year. So we're faced with about a $60 million deficit. Because of that, we, due to a long-standing tradition in Cherry Creek schools to keep cuts as far away from the classroom as possible, our superintendent has already initiated about 14 million in central reductions. All staff, top to bottom, has accepted a salary freeze, which actually results in a pay cut for most of our employees because healthcare benefits are going up and para contributions are increasing. Everybody also agreed to furlough days. However, we need to have an election in order to make up the rest of that difference. This Board of Education, my colleagues and I will be forced to cut if we don't pass the election this November, which will affect hundreds of teachers, which will increase class sizes. It will have a huge impact on programs and things that we love and that make Cherry Creek schools the excellent schools that they are. We kind of felt that it was our duty to allow voters like you to help us avoid these cuts by passing the election, because it's up to us to make the cuts if we don't pass. So there are two issues that will be on your ballots this November, 4A and 4B. 4A will provide 35 million in operating revenues so that we can keep all of those excellent teachers and skilled nurses and mental health workers that we have in every single school, and keep our commitment to safety and our commitment to innovative learning for all students. 4B, and that 4A is a mill levy increase. 4B is a bond. It's allowing us to issue bonds, which is sort of like a second mortgage on your home. So it was actually going to be 300 million until COVID. It was going to be even more than that before COVID. And then it was going to be 300 million. We've reduced it really to the bare bones, which is 150 million to minimize the cost to our taxpayers. The majority of the 150 million will go to major maintenance across the district, and nearly every building always needs things like a new roof here and new asphalt there. And it's not very sexy or exciting, but it's stuff that we have to do. And that's the only way, by issuing bonds is the only way in Colorado that school districts can expend money for capital needs. But 14 million of the 150 is also some continued innovation work in all of our high schools. and it will include an expansion of the health and wellness pathway at CCIC, which was built with our 2016 bond. So thank you, voters, for voting in 2016. And then 7 million is kind of exciting. It's only 7 of the 150, but it's dedicated to build a new mental health day treatment center to support our students. We're actually working on possible public-private partnerships for this, and this will be a first for any school district that we know of, not just in Colorado, but anywhere. And it'll help all of our students and families and really our broader community, because we know that there's not enough beds, if you will, or space in local areas to accommodate our students with the biggest needs, mental health wise. There's also some money set aside in the bond for safety and security and technology upgrades, and a renovation at one of our schools, Village East, I believe. So you can learn much more about both of these issues at citizensforcherrycreekschools.com, which is the grassroots. Which is part of the grassroots community website, or it is the grassroots community website for the campaign, citizensforcherrycreekschools.com. And we're hoping that parent leaders like all of you on this call tonight will help spread the word to your friends and neighbors. The quickest way that I can talk about this is like 5 seconds. Yes on 4A to support teachers and nurses, and yes on 4B to support mental health and safety. On that website, you can also sign up to receive e-newsletters and sign up to receive a yard sign and things like that. And that's all the contact tab on the web page. So one last time, citizensforcherrycreekschools.com. That should answer all of your questions. If you don't have any questions for me right now. So thanks again, you guys, for having me. I know you're going to learn a lot tonight. PIN presentations are always outstanding. So if that's it, I will sign off.
Thank you, Karen. If you want to just hang around, all of you are welcome to use the Q&A. If you hover your mouse at the bottom of the screen, you can see pop up a Q&A double little bubble, and you are welcome to type in there a question that you might have for our board president regarding schools, regarding those 2 initiatives, regarding possible cuts. So, and then of course, please do check out the website, Citizens of Cherry Creek Schools.
Citizens
for Cherry Creek Schools, plural, .com.
Perfect.
So that can help get you some more information, and you can put a sign in your yard if you want to keep your kids in our schools with all the resources that they're used to having. So, you know, a lot of us moved into this area precisely for this reason of our schools. So I keep seeing our number going up of how many people are joining us tonight. We are hoping that you will fill out the quick little poll. Should take you, 15, 30 seconds just to give us an idea of who's here. I do believe that you have the ability on your screen to raise your hand to raise your hand in response to a question that we ask, or if you have a question that you would like to ask. We are asking actually that you type in your question into the Q&A, but we would like to know how many of you happen to have brought or gathered around your TV or your computer with your children, middle schoolers to high schoolers. If you can let us know that in your participant area. I see one person has raised their hand. So let us know if you're here, and that will help our speaker. address more accurately what he needs to tell your kiddos. So I wanted to let you know that a few things that are important for today. This might be the first time some of you have joined us. Last week, our speaker was here. Both Dr. Scott Siegfried and President of the Board of Education, Karen Fisher, were here, and our main speaker, Craig Knippenberg, were here on September 1st. And you can listen to that entire recording from our website, pennccsd.org, and it will lead you to a video recording of this Zoom call. Again, if you listen to this tonight and you think, oh, I need my kids to listen, or my spouse, or my mother, or my sister in Texas, feel free to pass on the link, and we can get this wonderful information out to whomever it might benefit. pennccsd.org. At that place, you can also sign up directly to get our emails. So some of you might have heard about tonight's presentation because it's just ingrained in your brain. First Tuesday morning, second Tuesday night. Some of you maybe heard about it from your school newsletter, and others have gotten a direct email with a flyer about tonight's event. So that is the most accurate way to get information. So we encourage you to take advantage of getting this information straight in your mailbox to help you remember how to sign on. So if this is your first time of being here because somebody invited you or you just read something about this cool topic, let me tell you about PIN, Parent Information Network. It's been around for over 40 years, started by a group of parents, and our mission statement is to provide informative speakers on topics relevant to current parenting, education, and youth-related issues, and to provide a forum for parents to connect and create a caring community. So we have decided to pivot, along with a lot of other people during these crazy times, to offer you that caring community in this setup, in a webinar, and hopefully in the future, in the ability to create smaller groups and meet together to discuss certain topics. So that is in the works. We wanted also to let you know that if it were not for our sponsors that we have here tonight, it would be really hard for us to continue our work. So you can look at our website and see our 4 platinum sponsors. Happy Canyon Flowers and Chile Camps, and oh my goodness, it's going to come to me. I see the logos, and I'll let you know the other 2 sponsors. We have 4 of them. So thank you for being with us through these crazy times. Our chat feature is disabled, and I wanted to let you know if you have any questions to please use the question and answer button at the bottom. I see that some people are having a little trouble getting on. So, we will wait. Well, it is 6:45, and that is the time that we are scheduled to start our speaker. So feel free, if you're just getting on, just jump right in. We have our speaker, Craig Knippenberg, who has written an amazingly informative and very easy to read and use and put into practice book called Wired and Connected: Brain-Based Solutions to Ensure Your Child's Social and Emotional Success. And tonight he's going to talk about a topic that is really pertinent to so many of us about the impact of gaming and social media on our kids' brains. So kids, if you are here, we thank you for joining your parents, and get ready. Craig, you're on.
All right, thank you, Susan. I really appreciate it. Before I start the formal presentation, I wanted to give a shout out to Karen and what she said about funding for a day treatment program for mental health needs for students. I've 36 years, I've had a private practice here in the metro area. We see between our two main offices, we see probably 200 to 225 kids a week, many from Cherry Creek, because we're one of our is at Yale and I-25. And there is such a need for more intensive services for students. It is so hard to get kids those kind of services. I can't tell you how much. When she said that, I was like, that is exactly what money should be going for, because there are serious mental health needs. And we all know the consequences when those needs aren't met. We've had enough experience with that. So I couldn't support that more. On another note, thanks again for having me on. It is a beautiful night for a webinar. Originally, this was supposed to be in person. I was so disappointed I couldn't be on the stage with y'all. But it turned out to be a good night for that. My wife started one of our children's groups this week tonight, and she decided to call the parents and say, hey, would you rather just do a webinar, do it on Zoom? And they're all like, yeah, that sounds great. So everybody was happy with the technology, although it has gotten a bit old. Now, this is a two-part series. The first one was last Tuesday, and I think people can still watch that, or you can go to the PIN site, and that's about the basis of the social emotional brain, what the book is based on. And then tonight, we're going to zero in on technology, gaming, electronic gaming, and social media, and how that impacts the brain. Hopefully some of you students are here. I've done this for elementary students. I've done middle schoolers, high schoolers. It is so much fun. And we usually role play. So if we were doing this in person, I'd be getting you up on stage and you would pretend to be different areas of the brain. We can't do that tonight, but we made some creative animations. My IT person, Sydney, who's helped me out tonight, she'll be managing that and really did a nice job with that. So that we'll get underway. First of all, I want you all to know, and especially our students out there, that while I am a boomer, you can see my gray hair, I am a boomer, but I am not a boomer against technology. So I'm not one of those people that would say those whippersnappers out there are bad for you. Because I'll talk about some of the benefits of technology tonight and gaming and social media. I use it myself. I don't do a lot of gaming anymore. I used to. I was obsessed with a computer game called Risk back in 1985, 1990. It was on a floppy disk. Great board game. Just loved it. So I'm not against it. It's really about finding a healthy use, a balance in your life where those things can fit in and don't interfere with other areas of your life. I will be doing gaming first. For those of you who have younger children, I think it'd be appropriate for them to be here for the gaming part. When we get to the social media part, and I'll let you know when I'm going to do that, then you might, I'm thinking 6th or 7th grade on up, depending on how open you've been with your kids about the realities of what's out there on social media. So I'll let you decide that. I have had middle school schools where they've included 6th graders. Others have done 7th and up, but it is a very frank discussion. So the second half will be fairly frank, and I'll give you a heads up about that. And then the third beginning point is, I mentioned last week, the pandemic has really shown us how kids and adults, us too, but kids are just wired to connect. They just want to be with friends. They want to be doing things, having fun with their friends, being with each other. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, they couldn't do that. And so the gaming and social media became the replacement. Now, I wasn't really thrilled about that, but I was left with it too. I had to do the same thing. We all did. And most parents out there went way beyond their standards for gaming time or social media use because you had to. You had to work, you had a parent, the kids at home, and they didn't have anything to do, and they really enjoyed it. But it is time to sort of get back to normal now that school's in. The students need to get back into their normal process of limited gaming and focused on schoolwork and sports and other activities. So hopefully as the pandemic clears up, this will get even better for our students to be in real life, IRL. Finally, I always like to pull out things. I have a Facebook Live program every Tuesday, Thursday morning, and I like to pull things out of the news. And I just saw this morning about TikTok. They have basically 50 million users a day in the United States, just in the United States. Now you have to be 13 or over. You're supposed to be 13 or over to use it, unless you have parent permission. And my daughter and I were reading this article today. They estimate that 1/3 of those 50 million people using TikTok are 14 or younger than 14 years old. Now, my daughter looked at me, who's 15. She's a freshman in high school. She looked at me, she said, I wonder what percentage of those kids actually under 13 got their parents' permission. Maybe 2%? And I'm thinking, yeah, I bet you're right. And I bet probably 98% of those parents don't even know their kids on TikTok. Well, maybe not that much, but there's a lot that don't know it. And they are on it. And we'll talk about a very disturbing thing from TikTok later on that was in the news, and it's been online today. And then finally, just a little bit about me. We have 4 children. I've been, and several grandchildren. I've been a single parent for a while, and my wife and I are adoptive parents. Our 4th one was adopted, and doing the grandparents thing. Our oldest went to Cherry Creek High School and played on 2 state football championships teams. So that was pretty exciting for my wife when she saw that back in the day. So we've been doing parenting a long time. Now, Zuzu, I'm not seeing the PowerPoint on my view. I'm wondering, Sydney, if I'm not sure. I think last time I was seeing the PowerPoint. Oh, there we go. Now I got it. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next slide. And this is the book cover on the left. We do have a discount, $6 off. You get it for $15 if you go to our website, punch in PIN 2020. There's also the Scan Me code. And the book is for grades K to 6. I didn't have enough space to include the Teen Brain because it would have been another novel. But if you scan that, the code, you can get the first 3 chapters for free if you want to check it out. Also, so at the end tonight, a lot of the strategies I'm going to suggest to you are already woven in the lecture. So you'll pick up on ideas as we go. But then I have them all listed out in like 4 pages of tips and suggestions for gaming, social media, nighttime usage, how to know if your child has a problem or is maybe getting addicted. And if you scan on there and join the newsletter list, then you can get those. Sydney will send those to you. So you can get the book, first 2 chapters if you're interested, and you can get the handouts. So on our next slide, for those who were here last Tuesday morning, we talked about a couple of areas, the brain. And I'm just going to review these quick for our guests that weren't here on Tuesday and for any of our students out there. So I like to call this front part of your brain the president. It's actually your prefrontal cortex is the fancy name for it, or the frontal lobe. But I call it the president because it's really in charge of much of the functions in the rest of the brain. It is the master controller of your brain. Now, the first 3 stars there on the left, it helps you with attention, which is being able to pay attention to what you're doing, like in school, and also switch your attention when you have to switch to something else. Also filter out distractions. So if any of you kids out there have ever sat next to a window at school, you know the squirrels play in the trees, you know that the maintenance guys always seem to mow the lawns in the fall and spring on the school day, like right when you're in your most serious subject, they're out there mowing. And you're like, couldn't you do that after school? But it's, so you've got to filter out distractions, or if somebody farts in class, you've got to filter that out and stay focused. So it's your attention. It's your ability to organize yourself. So to have your materials, put your books away. Some of you do that well, some of you just stuff your books in there. But to kind of think about too, how your teacher, what their organizational system is. For you high school students, middle school students, you got 6 or 7 different organizational systems you have to deal with every day, and you have to know what those are. Some of those are online for my daughter. Her school's all online right now. Working memory is just things you need to remember until you've completed them. It's kind of like when you walk into a room and you want to get something out of a room, and you get to the room and you go, why did I come in here? That's a lapse in your working memory. So it might have been to pick up your candy wrappers because your mom told you to pick them up out of your floor, and you got to the room and you're like, what was I supposed to do? Now, you only need to remember the candy wrappers till you've done the job, and then your brain loses it. And then the fourth is time management, which is the ability to perceive time. How much time is something going to take? How much time do you have? And can you organize around time? And that really comes into play with gaming. And then the last two little blue stars there, impulse control and emotional control. So that's when if you get upset with your brother or sister or friend, and you want to say something mean or harsh. I've seen a little third grade boy today who told me how he just says horrible things to his sister and then he feels bad. And we talked about controlling his emotions. So it's the part of the brain that helps you with emotional control, or an impulse like you want to be the first in line and you go running up there to get a drink or to get in the lunch line and you knock 3 kids over. It's being able to have better self-control. So those are the presidential functions. Preschoolers don't have much of a president. I mentioned this last week, the preschoolers are the most violent age of children out there. They don't have a good restraint on their emotions, and they can be quite boisterous when they get upset. In terms of females and females, and again, this is just averages. So in general, females are about the 80th percentile of using their president. Females do that quite well. Us guys are about the 50th percentile. The main thing here to know for your kid, if you're a parent or you're a student, is to sort of know how well do you use your president? How good are you at it? And the general rule of thumb that the less internal structure you have, the less presidential function you have internally in your brain, the more you need external support. So you're going to need guidance from your parents or your teachers with agendas and lists, chore lists, et cetera, to get you through life. So we'll go to the next slide. Now the primary, so your brain, for you students out there, the brain, it's a neuroelectrical, chemical electrical process in the brain. Our brains have electricity in it, and the little neutrons, the electrons will dock on different chemicals. And one of the chemicals in our brain that helps our brain communicate with itself and others, or within our brain, it sends messages to other brain cells, is called dopamine. So dopamine is the main neurotransmitter for the president, and it's a big player in gaming that we're going to look at tonight. So the gaming's impact on it is huge. Dopamine starts in the midbrain. You'll see the sort of purple circles around that area called the amygdala, which we'll talk about later. And it says the limbic system, which is emotions and pleasure. But if you look at the green lines are the dopamine traveling through the pleasure area and up to the rest of the president. Now, this is really important because dopamine first, before it gets up there to tell you to pay attention or to stay focused or get seated, get on your work, it's going to travel through that pleasure area, and it's also for novelty. The human brain is wired to notice things that are different, to see things that are new. We're searchers, we're natural searchers, we're looking for new things. With research on preschoolers, they have these little, on YouTube, you can find these little preschool videos where there's little packages, little presents for kids. And it's just a pair of hands unwrapping this little package. That's all it is. And then they show another one and they unwrap the package, and over. And preschoolers will sit there for hours watching it because they just love to know what's in that box, what's in there. They love novelty, and all our brains do. And we also seek out pleasure, and we'll see how that works in a second. And then it travels up to the upper areas of the president. And again, that's paying attention, time management, organization, working memory, and impulse control. Being able to stop yourself from getting carried away in this situation with the game. Now we'll go to the next slide. And this is called the dopamine sweet spot. And if we have any questions come up, feel free to text them in, and Zuzu can get in touch with me. Then please do that. I'm going pretty quick. So if you have any questions, I can entertain those as well. But on this slide, it's called the dopamine sweet spot. So in the mornings, at nighttime, your dopamine levels go down. They have to stay on to keep you alive, because they are in charge of other important functions to keep you alive. But in the morning, your dopamine levels are supposed to come up and get into this higher level, the just right, the dark green area. And when they get to that area, all your presidential functions are working. You can pay attention, you've got good time management, organization, and good self-control and movement control as well. So you can go to school, you can try to sit still as best you can, and complete your work, follow your assignments throughout the day, and then they drop at nighttime. As you fall asleep, your presence starts to shut down. Now, if you like a subject, so let's pick a subject. I loved math when I was a kid. I detested reading. I was in the turtle reading group. In first grade, they called me, I was in the turtles. There was the monkeys, the giraffes, and the turtles. And I was put in the turtle group, and I knew what that meant. And so reading, that was my least favorite subject. So if you don't like it, your dopamine levels are going to drop, and you feel bored, and you don't want to go to that class or do that work, and it's hard to motivate yourself. If you like it, like math for me, your dopamine levels are going to go up, and that's going to keep you more focused. So if you enjoy the subject, it could be you enjoy the teacher, that it's a really compelling teacher for you, and so your dopamine levels are going to go up, and you're going to pay better attention and do a better job. Now, it could also be something like having one or two of your buddies in class. So if your friends are in the next class at middle school or high school, or you've got some good friends in your class in elementary school, that's going to help you feel motivated to go to class, enjoy that class a little bit more, and hopefully help you focus. So at that point, when you're in that just right zone, that focus level can get a little bit higher if you like it. Now, it's also with anything that's pleasurable. I mentioned last time we did chocolates. So if you really liked chocolate, not everybody does, but many people love chocolate, your dopamine levels are going to go up. If I gave you some, you're going to really enjoy it. And then your brain, if it's really good chocolate, it's going to say, let's try that again. That was pretty tasty. I would like to have some more of that. And so it keeps us going after things. And for nature and survival, if you think about people living in ancient times looking for berries, let's say you're out picking berries, any kind of fruit has lots of calories in a very small quantity. So it's an easy thing to eat and consume many calories without expending calories to get it. And so if our ancient ancestors found berries, they would eat them. And most of them would be like, that was great. I want to find more. Let's have more. And that would be a good thing for the brain. Now we're going to turn to the next video, to the next slide. For changing teens' brains, before we do, I'm missing, just from a tech standpoint, when Zuzu was going to have questions. Zuzu is no longer on my screen, so I'm not sure if she might have gotten locked out or something, but hopefully she'll be back on. Okay, now, so that was the basis on the dopamine system. Then changes in the teen brain. So for those of you in middle school, as you approach that change in life, puberty, you're going to have this massive expansion of brain cells in your president. You're going to add somewhere between 10 and 20 billion in there. And while it's building it, teenagers are often very spacey. They forget things, what their assignment was, particularly in middle school. They often have a hard time paying attention. They'll often do really silly things or foolish things. And then when you ask them why they did it, they often say, I don't know. And they really don't. The other thing that happens for teen is your dopamine levels drop in half. So you don't have enough dopamine to really keep you focused, especially if it's boring. Now, what that means for the pleasure system is a lot of times teenagers are just kind of bored. It's just not very fun. And then they seek things that will get them aroused, like that will be fun. Something you're having fun with your friends, you're joking around, you're horsing around. You start playing games, and those things increase your dopamine levels. You get what's called a dopamine juice. So anytime there's some excitement going on that's designed in video games that we'll be looking at, that's going to get your dopamine levels up, and your brain really wants to pay attention to it. Now, in school, that could also be doing something like you're sitting in class and you're looking at the ceiling. Both these stories are true. I had a middle schooler one day who, in the middle of my class, and I'm fairly entertaining when I teach, but in the middle of my class, he just took his pencil and threw it up into the ceiling, into the ceiling tile. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, I just wanted to see if I could make it stick. And I'm like, no, you don't be doing that. And nobody else do it either. I think eventually it fell down. I'm not sure, but he actually stuck it up in there. Another time it was middle schoolers, and I hear a big farting sound come to the back right corner of the room. And I look over there at this kid, and I'm like, excuse me, can we be a little more, have some better manners here, please? And the kids are kind of laughing and silly. I go back to talking. About 5 minutes later, there's this big fart sound again. And I'm like, Mr. Smith, I don't remember his name anymore, like, Mr. Smith, you may have to excuse yourself. This is interrupting my class. And he apologized, whatever. And then 5 minutes later, it happened again. And the whole class is just laughing hysterically. And that's when I looked to the back left corner. And I saw this boy, Dan. And I said, Dan, what are you doing? And he held up a remote control little stick. And he had a fart machine that he had stuck under his buddy's desk. And then he had the controller on the other side of the room and was controlling it. And I'm like, oh my God, get rid of that thing, turn it off, no more. But that's what they were doing to keep the dopamine levels up. So there are some times for all of us, even if you're a kid out there, for us adults, there's sometimes we're in meetings where you're just mind-numbingly bored. And you're just like, oh my gosh, what do I do to keep myself going? And sometimes you have to kind of entertain yourself in your head. Now, you don't have to do that with the gaming. The gaming stuff sort of does it for you. And the last thing on that teen brain, for teenagers, your other emotions in your brain get twice as active, so that the other areas, that emotional center, the limbic center, become twice as active as they did when you were in elementary school. So preschoolers have tons of emotions, and so do teenagers. They're both pretty much equal in terms of output of emotions. And you all can get pretty intense, pretty angry, pretty anxious. Things get very intense. And there's hormonal reasons for that we'll look at the end. Now, if we do the next slide, we're going to get to gaming. And so what I want to start with just is the concept of single-mindedness. Some of you kids have heard it from your parents, probably. If your parents go to yoga or some of these programs, they do breath work, meditation. Some of your teachers are probably teaching it to you already in elementary school. They might have videos they show where you're trying to be single-minded. Single-minded is when your brain just does one thing. It only focuses on one thing. So if you really were a chocolate person and I gave you a just incredible piece of chocolate, your dopamine levels would go up into this hyper-focused zone. And you would sit there, and as you ate it, and you can picture this right now, you can just picture that you can feel the velvety texture of the chocolate. You can smell it. You can just get this incredible taste as it melts in your mouth. And for about 15 to 20 seconds, your brain goes into hyperfocus. Exercise will do that. So exercise is great for getting you into a hyper-focused state. Any of you that are athletes out there, if you're a baseball pitcher, when a baseball pitcher is in a zone, it's because their dopamine levels have just skyrocketed. And all they can throw is strikes. They're just throwing one strike after another after another. And that's called being in a zone. You'll hear people talk about being in a flow state. You can definitely do that skiing. I used to ski before I blew my knees out. And there's sometimes that I was skiing down the mountain and I could just feel like it one with the mountain. It was just like this flow that I was in. Baseball batters, when they get in a zone, they'll talk about the ball feels bigger to them. They can see it bigger. And that's getting in this hyper-focused state. It doesn't have to be sports either. It could be over the pandemic. One of the most popular things was these jigsaw puzzles. They were selling out all over the country, all over the world. People are doing these jigsaw puzzles. And if you think about a jigsaw puzzle, when you do one, the only thing you can do is focus on the jigsaw puzzle. You can't really focus on other stuff. You'll never get it done. So it could be that. My daughter got a sewing machine 2 months ago. She's the last 2 months she's been doing tons of sewing, and she can do that for hours on end. Right now she's making stuffed animals and can do that for hours on end. Now, when you play video games, the gaming process itself, and this is if you like video games. So believe it or not, there are some kids that really aren't into video gaming. It doesn't float their bubble. It doesn't get their dopamine levels up. They could care less. But a lot of you are into gaming, and it brings you great pleasure. Now, to get into that hyper-focus zone, it's about for 30 minutes. Now, after 30 minutes, if you stop at around 30 minutes, then you're going to see how that line gently curves back down to normal, to the green area. So what happens, and you'll see in this video clip I'm going to show you, you'll see if we had the kids up on stage, things like, so your attention is really focused on the game. Your perception of time is a little bit in the background. It's not really thinking about time, but it's not totally gone. And the same with organization and working memory and impulse control. If you get over 30 minutes, then other things start to happen, which we'll show in the next video clip. But if you're going under 30 minutes, there's been some research that cooperative games where you're working with other players are great for development of empathy and teamwork. Those are great things for kids. And also for your family. The latest research out of Canada showed that parents who did video gaming with their kids for 20, 30 minutes a day had closer relationships with their kids. Now, it makes sense because if you're playing with them, you know their world and you understand your kid's world better and you have something to connect around. So you can talk about playing that game and you talk about it at dinner then, how you having so much fun and you can't wait till tomorrow night. That's no different than watching a TV show with your kids each week. My daughter and I just started a new one called The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel or something. So a really incredible show. But we can talk about that later. So it gives you a nice place to connect. So we're going to start with a game called Asteroids. And we're going to start with me. So if you'll turn the next slide, one of the kids always plays me. That's me in 1981. I was a senior in college. And they had, when you high school kids, you know about student unions at college because you probably visited them on your college trips. But the student union is a building where the students hang out, and they have like food and a copy center where you can do copying. And then we had 2 bowling lanes and then some video games. And we got this new video game called Asteroids. Now, it wasn't a handheld unit. This was a big console, like 5 feet tall, 3 feet wide. And it ran on quarters. So in the video that we'll show in a second, we're going to pretend that you're me playing Asteroids. And if we were in person, we'd have you on this stage. So we'll turn to the next slide, and Sydney will start to play this, and I will just talk as it goes. Let's see our little friend. Oh my gosh. I forgot about this one. We'll do our friend next. You got to love the style back then. And if you saw the kid, either had a quarter or a token, I can't tell. But arcades, it'd be a quarter for a token. And this is some kind of contest, and this kid's going to see how long he can play. And he's probably been playing a lot because he's got a wristband on his right wrist. I'm guessing he's quite the professional. And you can see it's a little spaceship that flies around and shoots the rocks. And the rocks are the asteroids coming after you. And if the asteroid runs into you, then you explode. And after you explode 3 times, then you're out. Don't you love those hairstyles? That's what people used to look like. Now, I will tell you, I was not nearly this good. Now, on this slide, so this is me in a more handsome version. I love that swooped hairstyle you gave me, Sydney, at the student union. And just the background. So I had a math class. It was like, it went till 10 o'clock. And then we had a break every day from 10 to 10:30. There was a whole all campus break, 10 to 10:30. I guess like snack time or something, or they had the chapel too. I went to a Lutheran school. But I would boogie over to the student union to get on the machine, to try to be the first one on the asteroids machine. And I had about $2 in quarters because I worked at a pizzeria and I deliver pizzas. So I'd usually come home with about $2 in quarters, and I would hustle over to the student union to get on the asteroids machine. And my main goal was simply to have a break and relax. And then at 10:30, I had a science class. As I recall, it was chemistry. So we'll play this and we'll see you, we'll look at inside the brain as we go. So I'm there just looking to get a break from school, have a little fun, relax a little bit. And you'll see the other functions. So I'm going to be focused on the game. So my attention is going to be on the game, but you're going to see that the other executive functions, the other parts of the president are still there in the background. I haven't lost them all. So in addition to being focused on the game, I also need to be focused about what my next class is, and making sure that I get to my class and remembering that I do have a science class coming up, and then switch my focus to science when I get there. Now, at the same time, I'm also thinking about, well, what do I need to take with me? Like, I got to make sure I have my backpack. I got to make sure I have my science textbook. Maybe it's the homework that I have to turn in. So I'm getting that stuff all there. That's got to be prepared for my next class. And then I'm also thinking about time. So I'm thinking about how much time do I have between my next class? How long do these games take? And I start playing, and I'm popping my quarters in. I will tell you, I was not I was a reasonable player. A quarter would usually take me about 3 minutes. So it was about a 3-minute game that I'd have, maybe 4 if I got lucky. So it was about 3 minutes a game, and I had 8 quarters. And then in my working memory, I have to remember to call my mom on the way to class. Now, what's funny about this one, Sydney, we have to change that picture because we didn't have cell phones back then. We only had pay phones, believe it or not. And I have to have some impulse control. So when my time's up, my quarters are gone, I could think about borrowing from another kid and missing class or being late to class, but I have to control myself. So I have to think about I gotta get to class. Now, those 8 quarters are gonna take me about, 3-4 minutes a game. That's about 24 minutes that I'm gonna have to play, and then time to get to my class. And let's say today I got a high score. It's my personal high score. I've had a great time. Now, again, I could be tempted to hit up a buddy about borrowing his quarters to play more, but since I haven't totally lost my self-control, I can restrain myself from doing that. So that is a perfect use of gaming. 30 minutes, I was totally relaxed. I did it every day. I had a ton of fun. I still remember it to this day. And then I'm ready to get on to my next class. Now, the limiting factor in that, as we watched that, was the quarters, and you can only play for so long on a quarter. Now, if you were better, let's say I was that superstar kid you saw in the video, a quarter might last me 30 minutes before I get taken out. Most people didn't. So there's a limit on how much you can play based on your quarters and how much money you have. Now, next we're going to look at what happens when you're doing unrestricted gaming. So this is with all your game sets at home, your Nintendo Switch, all those different devices you have at home. There's no quarters you got to plug in. So there's no real limits on the time. And so in this next example, we're going to look at how when you're playing unlimited gaming, your dopamine levels, once you get past 30 minutes, are going to keep going higher. And the higher they get, the more pleasure you feel. But also you lose your sense of organization, your sense of time management is completely gone. It's obliterated. Anything you needed to remember to do for homework. So this is usually you're at home now. And let's say you're supposed to be doing homework. That is totally gone. and it becomes very difficult to take yourself off the game. And one of the things that happens when you stop playing, when you finally get off, when your dopamine levels fall, when they drop, they actually will go lower than they started out, and you get moody. So a lot of parents will talk about when they notice their kids have been playing too much games, they're irritable, they're cranky, and then they ban them from games for 2 or 3 days. And a week later, the parents are coming to me going, he's like a totally new guy. He's just like he used to be. And back when he was younger, he's so sweet, he's so gentle. But when he was gaming, he was just a wreck. And that has to do with the drops in dopamine levels. So on this one, many of you out there, you kids, students, there's going to be so many times when you start playing, your mom or dad's going to say, hey, honey, you know, it's 30 minutes, or you got 40 minutes, that's your time limit. And you're going to get into playing, and you get so focused on playing, when they say your time's up, you're going to be like, wait, I just started. No, you told me I could have 40 minutes or 45 minutes. And because you lose track of time, it just gets obliterated. Now, we'll look at social media later. I will tell you, the same thing can happen on YouTube. You can go down rabbit holes on YouTube where you start looking for something on YouTube, kitten videos or something, and you can be totally gone. I'll bring that up again a little later in social media. But let's go to the next animation. So here's our new friend, and let's say he's doing, Fortnite. So I know Fortnite's going out of style, but that was the big thing. And Fortnite, by the way, not only was it a rage for everybody, but one psychologist did an assessment and found over 200 different things in it that spike your dopamine levels and get you to really focus on the game. So things like airdrops. So here's our friend. He started playing. Now, in the background are all those things we talked about earlier. We got to think about homework. He's at home, so we got to think about focusing on homework. We got to think about being organized for homework, the time management, how much time we have left. We got to get the homework done, how much homework we have, and the working memory piece. So those are still there when we start. Now, as we go, different things are going to happen for our friend. One of the first things, and I'll rely on, Zuzu's back with me, so I'll rely on her. She can be the mom for me. And the first thing the kid's going to probably ask for is the credit card, because there's a new skin he wants to get. So he yells, Mom or Dad, can I get a new skin? And Zuzu, what are you going to do? Oh, Zuzu, I love it. She gave me a look like, no way, I'm not doing that. But you wouldn't believe how many parents do it. And sometimes you do it as a parent because you're busy and you want, you got to get things done. And you're like, sure, honey, just go ahead and get it. Whatever Mom said, just do it. And then you want to show off your new dance moves. So our friend is, let's pause it for a second. Sid, so our friend here, he's got the new skin. He wants to do his new dance moves, show off to his friends. And everybody, kids, again, you are wired to have friends. We like to entertain our friends. We like to impress our friends. We like when our friends laugh with us. So now we're working on some new dance moves. And then we can hit it again. So our friend's playing, you can turn on it again. And you're just having a great time with your friends because you're playing with a group. You and your buddies or friends are out there just battling away, trying to be the last ones. And you start to kind of lose perspective of time. And let's say you're playing really well and you just want to keep playing more and more and more. So now our perception of time, it's clouded over, so you can't see it anymore. You got your friends kind of in there. We're starting to lose memory of, we got to call Mom when we're done with our homework because she's at work and we got to let her know my homework's done. We're kind of forgetting that. Maybe we're getting mad at our friend because he didn't protect you and you got shot or something. So now you're upset with your friend. Your brain is going focus, focus, focus. You're feeling this great pleasure of winning, but it's just screaming at you to focus. And then when Mom says, now this is where we got to change Sydney. It should say, Mom, I have to finish this game. So Fortnite comes in games. You play till you're killed or you win. And then our friend sees an airdrop. Now, if he gets the airdrop and it's something good, his dopamine levels are going to go up. Even if he gets an airdrop that's not so good, the next time his brain's going to go, oh, the next airdrop is going to be good. I'll get something there. And that's the same thing with people who gamble. When you win at gambling, you get a dopamine juice. But even people who are playing who didn't win, but they were close on a hand, will get a huge dopamine juice where they want to keep playing more because they're convinced that next time I'm going to win. So all those things, now that you can see across the screen, they've pretty much taken out any idea of getting the homework done, what time is it, maybe we're happy with our friends, maybe we're agitated with our friends. I had a couple high school guys come up to me after lectures at Denver School of Science and Technology. And one of the guys came up to me. They were with their friend who was female, and they were like, she says we were gaming too much because we got mad at each other last night. We're still mad at each other today. Is that a problem? And I'm like, yeah, it's a game you were playing last night. There's no reason to be mad at your best buddy today because he messed up at Fortnite. Like, that is a little too much. But you can see how as you keep playing, the dopamine levels go up higher, you lose those other functions, and it's incredibly hard to stop. So that would be our unlimited time. Now, we're going to do one more scenario on the gaming, and this is related to the first-person shooter games. So this would be like Call of Duty, Halo, Rainbow Siege 6. And we're going to zip along here, and then I'll explain some things to you. Okay, let's stop it right there, Sydney. And can you zip over to the one with the unlimited first-person shooter games? Sydney, can you flash on that one? Okay. Was there one right before that that had the first-person shooter games? I wonder what happened to that slide. Okay, I'll explain it to you. First-person shooter games, those in that hyper-focused state, those games will increase your dopamine levels like 16 times. They just spike your dopamine levels. There's barely anything in nature that will do that. Marijuana does. Marijuana and cocaine will increase your dopamine levels like 16 times. But it puts you in the stratosphere. And one of the reasons with the first-person shooter games is what's called, if we could go to the amygdala, Sydney. Let's get to the amygdala slide. So this was on a screen earlier, and I want to show this to you and talk to you about it and what's involved with the first-person shooter games. So your amygdala is this little piece of your brain. It's about the size of an almond, and that's what it means, is almond. And you have two of them, one on each side of the brain. It's responsible for your fight, flight, or freeze response. So it's your alarm system for your brain. And the way it works is sensory input comes into your brain, and the senses route it to your brainstem. And before your senses are sent up to hearing, to your vision, to figure out what you're looking at, to figure out what it is that you're actually experiencing, if the brain senses that something could be dangerous to you, it triggers your amygdala to go off and to respond. And so the research study that's the easiest one to understand is they had an experiment with subjects where they were measuring the electrical activity in the brain, and they had them walking down a sidewalk. And then they would turn the corner on the sidewalk and they'd start walking the other way. And there on the sidewalk, they had put a piece of rope that was in the shape of an S. So it's the shape of an S, so it looked like it could be a snake. And they measured what happened when the person came around the corner and saw that. And your amygdala, so the senses, sure enough, the people thought, uh-oh, and they startled. They had a response. They either froze up, or they started to get mad and ready to run or to fight it. Before they even knew that they were looking at a rope, it only takes a quarter of a second for your amygdala to go off. Now, once the amygdala is triggered, then the brain sends what it just saw up to the upper part of the brain to figure out what it is I'm looking at. Well, it takes another quarter of a second for your brain to realize, oh, that's a piece of rope. That's just a piece of rope. That's not a snake. So it's this instantaneous response, so that it's a survival instinct. So if you think about ancient peoples living here in Colorado, and Native Americans living here in Colorado, And one day you're walking to the stream to get water for the tribe, or you're walking out somewhere, and a mother bear and her cubs are there. And that mother bear, you hear the growl at you, your amygdala is immediately going to go off. And you're going to decide, do I fight this thing if I have to? Do I run? Do I freeze? Hope it doesn't notice me. There are some things, if you do enough hiking, you're supposed to learn on how to handle different bears. Although I will tell you, having backpacked in Denali National Park in Alaska, you can sort of tell a grizzly bear because they're huge, but it's hard to figure out which bear is what on the other ones. But it's going to tell you to fight or flight. Or to freeze. And so your brain is going to make an instant decision because it thinks you're about to die, that something's going to happen. For you kids, anytime you leave your house in the morning, the rabbits are out. Usually in the summertime in the morning, the rabbits are out eating your flowers, your grass. When you come out, those rabbits are going to freeze. They're going to have an amygdala response. They're going to freeze. Then they'll see if you notice them. And if you take a step towards them, they're going to take off. They'll run away. If you walk past them, they'll just stay frozen and then they'll go back to eating. So that's their amygdala being triggered. Now, it's nature's alarm system, and it triggers what's called cortisol. So if we turn to the next slide, Sydney, cortisol is a stress hormone, and it basically tells you to be intense. Like you have to be intense, like get geared up. So if you can think of you're getting ready to fight something, your muscles are going to tense up. Your blood flow goes out to your extremities, away from your brain. Your muscles tighten up, your heart rate increases, your breathing increases, and you just want to survive. Now, it's important to think about it. The blood flows away from your brain. When people's amygdalas do go off, they can do really stupid things. And you never know if they're doing the right thing or not. Some of the saddest stories you'll hear about as you get older is fires. A fire in a dance hall or at a concert, there's a fire, and somebody yells fire, and people panic. Their amygdalas go off, and they start running. And more people die getting trampled by other spectators than they do by the fire because people just go hysterical. So it's hard to think clearly when it gets triggered. The only people that can do it, or I have a nephew who is a lieutenant in the Marine Corps. He did 5 trips to Iraq. He is retired now. And he said, your training is you learn not to freak out. You learn to handle your amygdala and you stay focused and you do your job. But for the rest of us, it just sort of takes over. Then the next slide, if you do survive whatever you were under, your brain for the next 2 hours is going to try to remember what you experienced. It's going to say, remember what happened to you so you can prevent it next time. So when you're doing your first person shooter games, you're memorizing patterns, you're memorizing how you died, you're memorizing how to beat it again. Now keep in mind, in a first person shooter game, your amygdala doesn't know that's a game. So when there's bright flashes, there's gunshot, there's blood, there's explosions, your amygdala is going to go off, and your amygdala does not understand that's a video game. You consciously know you're playing a video game. Your amygdala doesn't. It's just going to set it off instantly when that stuff starts happening. Now, the first time they realized that visual images can trigger our amygdalas was during the Vietnam War. I was in middle school during Vietnam, and they would show on the nightly news soldiers bleeding. This little girl after an explosion in her village running down the street. Visual images. And what they found is people across America watching this on their TV had their amygdalas triggered as if they were there, that it was happening to them. So when things go off and you're getting shot at, even though it's a video game, your amygdala doesn't know that. And it's going to increase your cortisol levels, does all those things to your blood flow. And afterwards, it's going to be, I got to remember that. So back to our example, if you're a Native American and you're crossing the stream and you're going down to the stream and you see a bear, you get attacked by a bear. After if you survive, you're going to run back to your tribe and you're going to tell them every detail of what happened to you, where that bear is. It's by the 2 boulders that are next to the 3 aspen trees, right on that little crook of the creek. and you're going to remember every detail. And that's your brain's way of keeping you alive the next time, so that you know how to handle it. You've etched in your memory, you can handle it next time. If any of you have had out there, kids or adults, had traumatic experiences, car accidents is a common one, where you can feel like it was in slow motion when it's happening to you. And that's your amygdala memorizing everything that's happening to you during that accident. And then those memories can stay with you for a long time. I will tell you, for our high school students out there, I was a first responder at Columbine High School. At my office, we were a lockdown facility, and I have so many things just blistered in my memory from that experience, just talking with these kids who had had their amygdala go off. It's a very intense experience. Now, it also affects your sleep. So when cortisol levels present, it blocks melatonin. I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute. So you can't fall asleep because the melatonin is not triggering your sleep. It can increase depression, and over time you can have heart problems. And again, you have to think about your heart beating so hard because you think you're being attacked. Now, on the pandemic, one of the things that's been so difficult for the pandemic, many of you out there have been feeling just depressed, a sense of inertia, like you just can't get moving. You're just feeling kind of listless. And that's the impact of long-term exposure to cortisol. So for all of us, when the pandemic started, my wife and I and my daughter, we all thought it was going to be 2 weeks. That when they said we'd have to stay home, my teenage daughter looked at my wife and I and she said, "Oh, great, I'm stuck with you two for 2 weeks." And we're like, "Oh yeah, us too. We're stuck with you." But we thought it was going to be over 2 weeks. You can gear up for 2 weeks. But it turned into 2 months and 4 months and 5 months, and it just keeps going. And that cortisol levels just keep going up and stay there. And that's where you see some of these levels of depression now that we're finding with so many adults, and the increased rate of suicide. It really takes a toll on you. And the brain's just not really meant to have that much cortisol. So now if we can go back to our little friend, Sydney, if you can find our friend. So let's see if we can, that's that first part. Let's say he's doing one of those shooter games. So these are the stuff from earlier. Now we obviously would take out the skins because those aren't part of Call of Duty. But now we've got Mom, leave me alone. I got to finish this round. And I can't leave my friends behind. I can't desert them. We can keep going. We take the airdrop out too, since we're doing Halo or Call of Duty. But now with the cortisol level here shortly, it's going to start to kick up. So just about right here, it should kick up around 250, I think, Sydney. We'll see the cortisol level is going to kick in. And what that's going to do is going to add a whole nother layer of confusion. Can we get that thing to go? You're not getting it? Okay, I'm going to signal up. So I'll explain it to you. What's on the rest of this is just these clouds that say focus, intense, intense, intense. When I do this on stage, I normally have kids up there acting out the brain parts, but for cortisol, I bring up the biggest men I can find, or women, like really big people who come up there, and they're just yelling at the kid who's in the chair playing the game. And they're going, be intense, you got to suck it up. Come on, man. And that's what cortisol is doing. And then the other clouds are these things that say, remember, remember, remember. Etch it in your brain, etch it in your brain, etch it in your brain. And that's the impact on the cortisol. So it's intensity and remembering things. Again, I'm not saying don't play any action video games. I would just be careful and limit how much time you do it, especially on the first person shooter games. The last time I played, and then we have a question, a couple of years ago, my nephews, I'd play with them. I have 2 nephews who are in college now. And I got to tell you kids out there, I was always the designated victim because they wouldn't explain half the controls to me or what I was supposed to do. They would just have me like pop into the screen and then they'd shoot me and then I'd disappear and then I'd come back and within 2 seconds I was shot again. So it wasn't the greatest experience of my life. And again, if you are going to do first person shooter games, because of the memory impact, so again, after you've done playing for 2 hours, your brain's going to try to consolidate the memories from the game. Don't do your homework first. Do not do gaming, first person shooters, and then try to do homework. It is not going to be very effective. Let's take the question, Zuzu.
We have an anonymous question saying, we have approached the limitations issues as one of safety, mental health, web safety, et cetera. Can you give us a list
Yes.
of one or two resources or
Yes.
articles or websites with
That will, I've got those. I've got in the tips at the end. If you download that Q code or take a picture or whatever you do with Q codes, we'll send that to you. And there's all sorts of recommendations and tips on how to handle it. I love the health standpoint that the person mentioned. Everything I do, so I get to teach at St. Anne's Episcopal School. It's one of the independent schools. I have a mental health class. I teach kindergarten through 8th grade. And so I get to teach this to the middle schoolers. And everything I talk about is health. It's all about healthcare. It's mental health, your physical health, your well-being overall. That's a really good approach to take with kids. And the one I've loved of doing this in person with students, I've had so many kids come up to me afterwards and like, I had no idea that was doing it to my brain. And so I like a brain-based approach. And I do have several sections in my book on the gaming stuff. And we're going to turn to sleep next, and we'll talk about the sleep. But yeah, if you get the handouts, you'll have some information there. I love the work of Dr. Michael Rich, who's out of Harvard, and they look at electronic gaming and social media and how that impacts everything, relationships, all sorts of stuff. They're fabulous. Now, finally on the gaming, and then we're going to get to social media. Nighttime gaming is really not a good idea. And to be honest, me looking at the screen and you and your parents looking at the screen this time of night for an hour and a half isn't the greatest thing for our brains. And it's not really great for sleep. So you're at nighttime, during the day when the sun rises, and we have blue light. So here in Colorado, you see these tremendous blue skies. And that's a blue ray coming from the sun, and it tells your brain to wake up. So during the daytime, we wake up, wake up, wake up. As the sun sets and we see these spectacular yellows and oranges here in Colorado, that's the yellow light. The light ray changes and it goes to a yellow ray that hits your eyes, goes to your brain, and it tells your brain to make melatonin. And melatonin is your natural sleep aid. It tells your brain it's time to go to sleep. Now, you can also buy it at King Soopers. You can get melatonin gummies. It's the same thing that's in your brain. It's natural for your brain. If you have a genuine sleep problem, you can take melatonin. But in this case, when you're using screens, it blocks melatonin for an hour or two. So it becomes very difficult to fall asleep. Now, you can get the newer devices, my new phone, my new computers, they all have the nighttime setting. So make sure your devices are in nighttime settings, and it will switch the blue light to yellow light. So you won't have the blue light hitting you as you normally would. So make sure on new settings, you've got it on nighttime mode, so you have yellow light and not the blue light. But even with that, so when you think especially about action games, it's changing, explosions, things are changing all over. That's activating your brain because it's changing light. It's light, shadows, this. It's stimulating your brain. So the one thing you don't want to do is at least an hour before bed. The gaming and screens really don't mix very well. Same thing with your screens and social media. TV is really not recommended 45 minutes to an hour before bed for adults either, folks. So good sleep hygiene, that's a good health phrase, is no screens 45 minutes to an hour before bed. Now you can do the Kindles for reading, that's fine, that's not going to bother you. If you are playing, a lot of the students were getting yellow light glasses or red light glasses. You can get red light glasses online, and they're red shades, and it basically changes the light to a red zone that's much more calming and mellow. So when we were all doing that spring school last spring, the online school, I had several students who were getting the red glasses and using those, or yellow light glasses to decrease the intensity on your brain. But again, it does interfere with sleep, just the changing nature of all this stuff. really keeps you awake. And it also disrupts your dream sleep. And if you don't have dreams, we all dream every night. We're supposed to 4 or 5 times a night. You might not remember them, but if you don't have good dream sleep, you will be cranky and irritable. And that's going to put you over the edge. Now, I want to turn to social media for the next half hour. I guess I have about a half hour, I think, Zuzu. We can go a little longer if that's all right. So just a few tips on healthy gaming for you younger kids who are going to be going off the show here in a second. We don't have to do that yet, Sydney, but if you're going to be gaming during the week, I would tell you, and parents, I would recommend 30-minute limit. So 30-minute limit on gaming during the week. So a lot of parents don't allow it during the week. If your kid has sports, and there's so much homework nowadays, and for you high school kids, the amount of homework you get between 1990 and 2000 doubled. And I'm sure it's doubled or tripled since then. So you have so much more homework than I had in 1977. It's just incredible. And so you probably don't have time to game during the week. But if you're going to allow gaming, I go 30 minutes a night, and maybe a couple nights, times a week, you do it as a family. You game together. You could have a couple blocks on the weekends. So what you're trying to avoid is long, extended periods of time. And I know some of you out there, because I see teenagers all the time, and they were telling me about during the pandemic, they're 5, 6 hours straight, not eating, just saving their pee until they can go pee, just nonstop, late at night, 3 or 4 in the morning. That is really unhealthy for you. So I would be very careful. And if you can, do several shorter blocks. Several shorter blocks are better for you than one long block. Homework first, nothing an hour before bed. And then if you download the handouts, I would encourage you to go over there, the parents go over the handout, the tips with your kid. So help your kid understand, hey, here's the basic tips we need to follow. And then we're going to set our rules accordingly. In terms of consequences, parents, that's often a big question. If your kid's not turning it off when they're supposed to, or they're sneaking the controllers late at night, etc. I sort of like the day-to-day model. So if you're allowing video usage during the day, and you find out, when you say, honey, time's up, you got to turn it off. If they don't turn it off within 5 minutes, then you don't get it tomorrow. And you can't keep, as a parent, you can't keep going in there 10 times. I told you to turn it off. I told you to turn it off. Turn off the machine. You will lose. You'll go out of your gourd, and your kids will too. So it's, look, you got 5 minutes. Turn it off. Finish up with your buddies. Tell them you have to go. And if you have to leave in the middle of the game, too bad, so sad. You shouldn't have started the extra one. It doesn't matter. We don't argue with the parents about turning it off. If you do, you don't get it tomorrow. And the same if you're sneaking or this sort of things. Now, in the tip sheet, I talk about you keep the controllers in your room with the cell phones and all that stuff, the chargers, they should be charged in your room. You can't have the stuff in the kid's bedroom at night. If you got a middle schooler, high schooler, and they got a gaming system in their room, let's say middle schooler, they're not gonna be able to control themselves from, in the middle of the night turning on. Some can, many can, but there are some that aren't gonna be able to do that. So you really have to restrict the access to it. And it's very addictive. And it's a big motivator. The dopamine juice you get it from is incredible. Okay, I want to thank for the younger kids for tuning in, and we're going to switch over to social media. Again, it's pretty much the same brain systems. We'll do one more little vignette, but I want to add a few things on. First of all, in terms of usage, there's the estimate is there's 2 billion social media users every day. And in the world, and the average person looks at their phone or their device 150 times a day. Now, for you math kids out there, 2 billion times 150, that might be as much money as Jeff Bezos has. That's a lot. Lot going on. Pre-pandemic, so before the pandemic, so we're talking last fall, Colorado Public Radio did a series called Teens Under Stress. And one of the things that happened the year before that, so 2 springs ago, the suicide rate for teenagers just exploded. It went up like 70%, 60, 70% 2 years ago. All the districts were affected by that. Cherry Creek was affected by that. It's just a rash of depression and anxiety for kids. So this is pre-pandemic. And they ran a story, and I got to be called Teens Under Stress. And I got to be their brain specialist. So I got to explain the teen brain, which was enjoyable. But the two main things they were looking at then as to why this jump in teen depression, anxiety, teen angst, was that what they're relating to is most people feel academic stress, this push for homework to get into college you want to get into, the stress kids feel. A lot of your students at Cherry Creek are high performing kids. They're wanting to get into big schools, but they're under a lot of stress. And social media, that all the stuff, all the BS that goes on with other kids at school, it's 24/7 and it's on all the time. And so you're constantly being inundated. And those were the two big drivers. Now we'll have the pandemic effect as well. I also want to give a disclosure for you students out there, and this is in the tip sheet. My wife and I, our family is part of the Wait Till 8th movement. It's started out in Austin, Texas, about 5-6 years ago, I believe. There's a chapter here in Colorado, but with it, Wait Till 8th, you don't give your child a smartphone until 8th or 9th grade, because the use of that for younger kids, early middle school, younger children, it's just like putting a gun in somebody's hand who's suicidal. It really just takes things over the edge, and I'll explain why. Now, we can have healthy social media use. That does exist. So I'm going to pretend I'm going to use mine in a healthy way. If I wasn't on this webinar with you, I'll tell you kids what I do every day. I do like my Instagram. And so every morning I start with coffee, I read 2 newspapers, and then I check my Instagram. And I spend about 10 minutes. A friend of mine just posted something about back to school night at Denver Academy. It's virtual, because I know the back to school nights are canceled, but Denver Academy is doing theirs virtually. Another friend with a huge quilt that's a letter to their daughter. That's incredible. And then we got some football stuff going on from my buddy who's an OT, talking about rotator hip injuries on football players. And then I just keep strolling along. There's some political stuff here. Some pictures of friends up in the mountains, and our neighbor who just had a baby. So that's a great way for me to stay in touch with friends, to connect with the world, see what's going on. The key is that I'm doing it in short bits. So it's a 10-minute process of me checking that. It's not me looking at it constantly throughout the day. Now, just to be honest, I will tell you parents and your kids, I'm a big news person, so I love to listen to the news on the radio. I love to read newspapers. I used to check the news on my phone. Usually at pickup, my daughter's school got out at 3, and I check it. I get there 15 minutes to carpool, and I check it for 15 minutes, maybe once in the evening, in the morning. When the pandemic hit, I was checking it all the time, just nonstop throughout the day. And I finally just had to go cold turkey and just stop looking at it, because it was putting me over the edge. It was so stressful keeping up with that pandemic. So the key is to block it out in small bits. Now, for those of you who like little kitties or puppies, there was a research study found that for adults who looked at 5 to 10 minutes, so 5 to 10 minutes at work, if they took 5 to 10 minutes and they looked at kitty videos, cat or puppy videos, they actually were more relaxed and they were more productive. So they actually did better at their job. So next time you want to look at kitty videos and your parents are bothering you, could say, well, Mom, that guy on the webinar said it was good for you. And it is for 5 to 10 minutes. The problem with YouTube especially, if you're having a hard time in your homework and you go to YouTube and start looking stuff up, you can end up down a rabbit hole. And 40 minutes later, you're like, oh my gosh, because your time perception, just like with gaming, same things what happens with social media, you lose perception of time. And all of a sudden you've been on that for 40 minutes looking at. The other day, my daughter, instead of doing online school, she said, I kind of got on a rabbit hole. I was looking up DIA and what's underneath DIA, and is it really the Illuminati? And I'm like, oh my God, get to your work, like just do the work. I can't take it anymore. And the only thing under DIA, kids, is rotted metal from a baggage system they designed to be state of the art, and it never worked. And now it's mothballed down there because it would cost them too much to take it out. So that's all that's down there. But you can find lots of stuff on YouTube. So it's a limited time use, not all the time. I will also tell you my son, our third child, he's in medical school, and he and his girlfriend's, she's in medical school with him. She's a big social media person. Until this spring, they had to spend 4 months studying for their medical board exams. And the shutdown was perfect for them because they just had to study all the time. But she finally gave up all her social media because it was interfering so much with her studies. And she knew she had to pass her medical boards. Now, the other thing I want to just briefly talk to you about is your brain development as a teenager. So one of the things that happens socially for you is you increase your ability to understand what's called nonverbal communication, to recognize others' emotions, to use facial expressions to communicate with each other, to understand who's popular, who's the in kids, what's not cool, what's uncool. You don't want to be a nerd, all this stuff. And that explodes at puberty, and your brain starts doing it really well and really fast. And so typically with middle school, you just see this growth in it. And sarcasm just explodes. And you have all sorts of little inside jokes with your friends. And you learn about sex. And you talk about everything about sex that you possibly talk about at school. And there's jokes about everything with sex. And the adults around you can't say almost any words without you all laughing and thinking that's just so funny. They said doing it, or something like that. And it's just exploding. And it's nature's way of helping you bond together. So the teen brain is driven to connect with other teens and bond with other teens. Because in the old days, especially, you were going to survive with people your own age. People older than you would die eventually, which they still do, much later, however. But you were going to live and die with people your own age. And so you had to bond with the group, and you were surviving. So if you think about Native Americans out here in the Colorado, in the mountains, surviving the winter, your chance of surviving on your own was minuscule. You had no chance of surviving by yourself. So the human brain is wired to, let's connect with other teens, let's work together, play together, be part of a group. And the biggest thing for teens is the fear of what one colleague used to call the teenage life was a 24/7 job of avoiding embarrassment. That teenagers can't stand being embarrassed, especially by their parents in front of their friends, because then the kids are going to laugh and you may not fit in. And middle schoolers can be incredibly cruel. They're learning how to communicate, how to fit in, also learning how to influence others. One of my favorite movies I mentioned to the parents, some of you teenagers will think like, well, that's so stupid, but I love Princess Diaries, one of my favorite films, and about how kids were trying to be cool and being mean to this one girl. And that stuff is rampant in your hallways in middle school and high school. The good news is that it gets better as you get older. So if you look at the research, 80% of middle schoolers feel they got bullied in middle school. If you ask high schoolers, how many of you got bullied in high school? That number drops in half to 40%. And I've never seen it, but if there was research done on college kids, my guess is it drops to 20%. There's still going to be bullies out there. There's still going to be people harassing you, but it drops a lot because people mature, their brains develop. They're not quite as sophomoric and juvenile. Juvenile is a good term. They grow up. So that's the good news. But while you're going through it, all these things are going on for you socially and wanting to fit in. And I went to one of the first middle schools in the country. Before that, they had grammar school and junior high. And I can remember the bus corral, two kids starting to fight. And you'd have 200 kids surround them in a big circle. Now you're hoping, your parents are hoping that somebody's going to step up and go, oh, you guys, let's knock it off. We don't have to have a fight. Come on, chill out. But you got 200 kids, and guess what? They're all screaming. Fight, fight, fight. Trying to get those two guys to square off. Now, you know what's wrong, but there's also fear. Because if I'm the one kid that says, oh, let's not have a fight, guys, maybe they'll turn towards me. And sometimes in middle school and high school, you will say things to your friends or somebody else that you will regret maybe the rest of your life, that you wish you hadn't done it. but you did it out of fear or you wanted to impress your friends. That's all teen life. Your parents had the same thing. I had that same thing. And people have been having that for thousands of years. Aristotle has quotes about teenagers. So that's going on for you. And social media for your parents, it takes all that massive teen angst is a good phrase, and gives it this mouthpiece that's 24/7, and it's permanent. Everything out there online is permanent. And it's 24/7, and your kid's never get a break from it. If I had trouble with a kid in high school, I'd go home. Well, my mom picked us up. We went to a private high school. Mom picked us up 3 o'clock, go home, play with my brother, do a little bit of homework. We'd watch TV. We had Pong. That was the first video game, Pong. Or we'd play sports, sit down in the basement or outside. And I wouldn't have to see that kid till 8 o'clock the next morning. So I got a break. From 3 till 8, I had a break from that kid. Now you don't. It's 24/7. Other kids texting you, wondering about what's going on, and it just keeps going on and on. Also, for your emotions, I mentioned this to your parents, you've got this huge surge of emotions, estrogen and progesterone for females. For males, the testosterone just shoots right up, makes you pretty edgy, pretty intense. So teenagers in general are pretty intense already. And the social media becomes another outlet for them to be intense and express all this. And you also want to be close to your friends. And that's what it becomes so difficult, because you don't want to miss out on stuff. You want to be close to your friends, but sometimes it's just too much. So we're going to do the next slide. This should be the social media roller coaster. Oh, lovely. So we're going to do a little vignette. I'm going to show you one more. We're going to use Snapchat on this one. And I want you to look at the graph. So you got two chemicals. Dopamine is one we talked about earlier. That's the blue line going up and down. And cortisol levels is the stress hormone. Now, in the vignette, you're going to see every time the student says, a girl who's supposed to be doing her math homework, every time her phone dings, like you could have it set on a ding, it vibrates, whatever your ringtone is. But usually in the role plays I have, one of the kids sits there and goes, ding, ding, just randomly, right? During the whole exercise. Every time that phone dings, your dopamine levels are going to spike. You're going to want to know who's calling me. What are they sending? What's the picture? Who's likes me or doesn't or whatever. So it's going to be these constant dopamine spikes. If it's negative, now at the start of this video, we're going to look at how it's positive. So the first part for this young lady, it's all great stuff. So she's getting this dopamine juice that compels her to check her phone every time. Then she tries to go back to do her math work. Well, what you have is what's called constant partial attention, that you're only attending for a little bit, then you're distracted by the ding. Then you got to check the phone. Then you got to try to go back to math. Well, every time your brain switches an activity, switches what it's focused on, it takes it 2 to 3 minutes to kind of recover from it and get going again. So if let's say you start on a math problem, then it dings. You got to check it. So now you're picking up your phone, you're looking at it, you're checking it, you're sending a message back. Then you go back to your math book. It takes 2 to 3 minutes for you to get focused on math again. So it's this constant process. And you'll hear about adults talk about multitasking. It really is a bit of a myth. Nobody can really multitask. They guess, and which means being able to do several things at the same time in your brain. There's only about 5% of people they think can actually do that. The rest of us just switch back and forth. So having the phone on, even if it's good, it's still distracting. Then in the second part, you're going to see where it turns negative, and her cortisol levels are going to start going up and up. And the more your cortisol, if you look at that red line, the more it gets triggered, eventually it just stays higher. It just keeps going at a higher level, and eventually will plateau at a higher level, which is what we've all experienced during the pandemic. So we'll see the person get worried, upset, a lot of comparison. Kids will often compare, even adults, not just kids. Anybody uses social media, you see pictures of families who are happy. You see your friends that are happy. They're at a party. And you're kind of comparing yourself to them. And, well, wait a minute, your family didn't do that, or you didn't get to go to that party. You weren't invited to that party. Or the person looks so perfect. Well, here's the thing you have to remember. Nobody shows, I follow Instagram. I've never done Snapchat, but on Instagram, nobody posts pictures of their family having a horrible day. You will never see that. You're not going to see a picture of you looking your worst when you've just woken up. You're not going to put that on Instagram. Everybody puts on the good stuff. And you have to remember that, but that's hard to remember when you're seeing that stuff all the time and comparing yourself. And then we'll see a little bit of FOMO at the end. We'll go over that. And other thing, a key to mental health for everybody, for adults and students, is called compartmentalizing. And compartmentalizing means when you have a bad day or a bad experience, that when you get home or you got to go to work, you got to go to school, you put it in a box in your brain and you say, you know, I'm not going to think about that till I get through school today. I'm not going to think about that till after work. My wife started, I had to prepare for this afternoon. My wife brought up something from a thing we got from the school. And I'm like, honey, I'm going to deal with that tomorrow. I can't deal with that right now and prepare. I've got to compartmentalize. And with the social media and the 24/7 nature, you don't really get a chance to compartmentalize. And we all have to be able to put things in a box and lock them up. You can't keep all your emotions open 24/7. So let's roll that sitting. And so here's our student. She's going to be starting out, getting ready to do some math homework. We got the computer there, and she's sitting on the floor right now, and she's checking her Snapchat, maybe doing a picture herself, or she's just looking at what her friends are sending before she starts doing her work. And then all of a sudden, the little ding goes. Now, again, she's supposed to be starting on her math, and maybe she has, but it dings. And a friend of hers posts a picture of her new shoes. And then she tries to put the phone down, but it dings. And then there's feedback from other kids, and there's a like. And it's her friend, so she takes time to send a like herself, puts the phone back down, tries to go back to work, and then it dings again, and somebody's got a comment. So cute. And then there's a little later, there's another comment. Love them. So now here we are. She's been trying to get back to the math work. And now we've even changed outfits. I love that, Sydney, because she's got volleyball after this, by the way. And she's finally getting some work done. And then she has a thought. What if I post a picture of my new shoes? So she takes a picture of her shoes. Now let's pause it there for a second. So she's just posted her shoes. Now, what is she hoping is going to happen? She's setting that phone down, and she's trying to do some math work, but she's waiting to get some likes. She's waiting to hear that phone. Ding, checks it, and there's going to be likes, just like her friend got. That's what she's hoping for, right? But let's say this goes on for a while, and nobody's dinged back. Nobody's done a like, and she's not hearing anything. Now she's anxious. Like, why aren't people responding to me? So now she's kind of getting worked up, really not thinking about math too much, so fire it up again. And then let's say she finally gets a ding, and it says, I had those shoes 2 years ago. And now she's just horribly embarrassed and upset. And somebody else says, no, not cute. And she gets a couple of those thumb down things. And even her best friend doesn't do anything to help her. Stop it for a second. So now she's distraught. Several of the people send her some shaming messages. Finally, let's say she tries to get back to work, and her friend emails her and her Snapchats her and says, I'm so sorry, you know, that was mean of those kids, and they don't even know who you are, and I like your shoes. So now she's feeling a little better, but she's still wondering, what do other people think about this? Should I have posted those shoes on that? Should I have posted that picture? And now her mom says, it's time to go to volleyball practice, honey. And she says, don't take your phone this time, because last time the coach said that interrupted your practice. But she's tempted to know what's going on. So she sneaks the phone in her athletic bag, puts it on silent in the car, gets to volleyball practice. And now she's supposed to be focused on volleyball. She's trying, but then every time there's a little break or a little water break, she gets over there to the bag, has to check the phone again to see if anybody's been responding. Now, in this next scenario, we're going to pretend that it's the next day at school, and a friend of hers has come up to her, and we can turn that now back on. And her and her friend are talking in the hallway, and her friend says to her, I'm having some friends up to Vail this weekend. We're all going up to Vail. We got a house up in the mountains. We're going to go to Vail. Would you like to come along? And our friend's like, yes, that sounds great. I can't wait to go with you all up to Vail. And her two other best friends are going. It's like 3 or 4 of the girls are going, and just all excited about it. And then she walks away, and then she talks to her mom about it later. And she can't wait to go. And her mom says, but wait a minute, honey, you have a volleyball tournament coming up. You can't go this weekend. You've got a volleyball tournament. So let's pause it there. And our friend then says to her mother, well, I didn't know I had a tournament. And why didn't you tell me? And I hate volleyball. I miss everything because of volleyball. And mom says, but honey, you've been playing since you were 6. You love volleyball. We got you those private lessons. You're at the Air Force Academy camp. You're trying to get a scholarship, remember? Oh, I don't care. I'm just doing it for you. And volleyball is ruining my life. Absolutely miserable, right? I see some parents acknowledging, going, yeah, we get that, okay? So now it's the weekend. She's playing volleyball, so we can turn it on again. And she's trying to get herself together to play. She checks the phone after the first match or whatever. I don't know. My daughter used to play. And she's trying to focus. And then she looks at the phone and she gets this picture of, here we are in Vail and her friends getting ready for a little campfire, probably some s'mores. And now she feels like she's missing out. And that's that FOMO word of fear of missing out. So as you watch that, it's this unending process of checking positive, negatives, worries, missing out. And your parents had all those things too. My parents had those things too. But the social media just adds an element that sort of takes it over the top. Now, before I'm going to turn finally, let me check the time here. We're going to talk about the dark side for a minute. So let's go to the next one. So that's impact again on the brain. You really can't focus. We're going to call this the dark side of social media. These are sort of cautionary tales when I tell students these stories, and it's really to help them think about what they're doing and to remember it's curiosity that killed the cat, and curiosity can take you places online that are very dangerous. First of all, your parents had the same impulses you do. They have the same feelings you do. There's no difference. What's different is the way they express them. So when I was in middle school, we had these things called slam books. And everybody had to carry a notebook. That was the rule. You all had your own notebook with your name on it. And if somebody came up to you and they said, give me your book, you had to give it to them in the hallway. And then they'd write in your book about how horrible you were. They would just write awful things about you, and they would slam you and then give it back to you. And you couldn't erase it. You couldn't take it out. And then you would slam somebody else. And we did that every day in middle school. Now, ask me if I still have my slam book. No. And if I ran for public office, let's say I want to run to be the next governor, is any news station going to come up to me and go, we found your slam book for 7th grade at Spearing Middle School, and we saw those horrible things you wrote about people. You're out of office. No, it's in a landfill. My slam book's deteriorated. It's compost right now. Anything online, though, isn't. It's permanent stuff. And so you really have to think before you hit send. Before you accept an invitation from somebody, you really have to think. Now, there's been challenges of all sorts, and challenges with teenagers have been going on for ever. We used to challenge each other to car races, really stupid stuff. On the internet, a couple years back, we had the Tide Pod Challenge, which is really stupid. The online thing, Momo, was pretty popular, and this creature challenged you to do certain things, including commit suicide. The newest one, the Benadryl challenge, heard about that one from my daughter, which is the new thing on TikTok, is to see how many Benadryl you can take and what happens, and whether you hallucinate or not. Well, it can cause you to hallucinate. It can also cause you to have a seizure and heart failure, and really not a smart thing to be doing. In fact, they found a kid in Oklahoma who died from it. There's also been lots of conspiracy things and predator things. And stuff, some of that stuff is classic teenage stuff. Teenagers love conspiracy thoughts and worried about creepy people and what they're doing, all those slasher movies that are popular with teens. All of that's online, and you can find tons of that and go down rabbit holes that'll take you. That's just all, it's about the same as what's underneath DIA. It's nothing. Now, the most recent one for parents to understand, and it's getting more insidious. So TikTok back on like August 30th, had a video of a U.S. Army veteran, who was struggling with depression, and he took his own life, and he filmed it and shot himself in the head. And TikTok left it up there, and it was on there for like 5 or 6 days. And it even had like somebody morphed it a little bit and had like a picture of a guy saying, "Oh, you want to see kitties or something?" So the kids would watch it. The really creepy part, they estimated it was downloaded maybe 2 million times before they took it down. That means 2 million people downloaded this thing. You're going to be posting it online. So you really have to think about, do you want your kids on TikTok, and monitoring that stuff more effectively, because it's just really twisted. And my guess is we're going to see copycats of that. Copycats is huge. Copycat things, we've known that for years. Teenagers that copycat what other kids do. There's probably going to be more of the same thing. But that was just online. TikTok's taken a bunch of pressure for it. So you really got to think about what's on there. Bullying, we all know about online bullying. Got to tell you, if you're mad at another guy, you're a guy, and you're pissed at somebody, and you want to take a picture of a gun and text that to them, or do a Snapchat of a gun, I would tell you, don't do that. I know a kid who did, and it did not go well for him with the police. That's a death threat when you start sending pictures of guns. And parents would be surprised how much that happens. I had a kid years ago who took a picture of his erect penis and sent it to a girl. And it wasn't a girl, it was a friend. This was not sexting, this was bullying. He wanted to bully her by showing a picture of his erect penis. Like, ha, ha, ha. Now in that situation, the parents worked it out together. They had been a long time. The parents knew each other. That could have gone to the courts, and he could have gotten charged with child pornography, distribution of child pornography. But it fortunately didn't go that far, but that was a big problem. So you might be tempted to bully somebody and send pictures or send hateful things. What I can tell you is, having been involved in numerous difficult situations and involving people getting hurt or suicide, when the police start investigating things, they look at everything, and they trace your friends, and they find out what they've been posting and what you've been posting. That is not a fun experience. Sexting, you've probably all heard of. It's basically sending pictures of your naked body to a friend. Now, assumably it's someone you're having a boyfriend, girlfriend, or a girlfriend, girlfriend, or romantic relationship with, and you're forwarding them pictures of yourself. Now, the first case in Colorado, this is going back when this 10, 12 years ago, 3 girls in Parker, Colorado, 3 girls, 7th grade girls, were having a slumber party. And they decided to do some sexy poses to send to one boy. And then they took one picture of themselves topless, and they sent it to this boy. Parents had no clue the girls were downstairs. Well, the boy got it, and he decided to forward it to his friends. So he forwards to all his buddies. Well, the parents become informed of this. The police got involved. They confiscated all these kids' phones, computers, to see who got it. And he was charged with a possession of child pornography. So child pornography is any sexual images under 18. So if the person is under 18, these are 7th grade girls, 14. If they're underage, that's considered child pornography. He was charged with possessing it. He had it on his phone. He saved it, and he distributed. He sent it out. Now, that particular case, I never heard what the final outcome of his was, but I will tell you that in Colorado, 10% of people are on the sexual registry. Now, these are what are called sexual predators, people who have assaulted someone, raped somebody, had child pornography, and it's a lifelong thing. If you get arrested for that and you're convicted of it, you go on a sex offender registry. That's for life. 10% of Colorado citizens who are on that are ages 12 to 14. It was a felony. Now in Colorado this year, as of January 1st, they've now made it a misdemeanor if you're a minor, sharing explicit photos with another minor. it's only a misdemeanor. So it's not a felony offense. You won't get put on the registry, but only if it's consensual. Now, consent is the most important word you can know as a teenager. Consent means that if you and another person want to send nudie pictures, you want to kiss, you want to make out, you want to do other sexual activities, consent means both of you are agreeing to it. You're both saying, yes, I want to do this. It's not forced. No one's manipulating you. Nobody's saying, if you don't send me a picture of you that way or naked, then I'm going to tell everybody this or this about you. Or I'm going to show the other picture you gave me. I'm going to send that out. That is extorting someone, and it's twisting an arm to do it, and that is not consent. Consent has to be that you both agree. If you, for practical sake, if you, one, I would tell you, don't send them. Whatever you do, just don't send it before you do it. You can talk about it with your friend, laugh about it, but don't do it. If somebody sends you a picture, delete it immediately. Do not save it, because that at that point is possessing child pornography. So you really can't hold on to it. You want to delete it. Don't forward it to anybody. So it's all about having a healthy relationship and being as safe as you can be. Let's take a question, because this is kind of an intense discussion. Susan?
Yes, thanks. We have a couple of questions here that are not particularly about sexting. One goes back to screen time.
Yeah.
And another goes to the smartphone idea. So are you good going backwards?
I am, yes.
Okay. My son wants unlimited and unmonitored screen time as long as he gets his homework and chores done, and spends some social time with family and friends and stops 1 hour before bed. This kid has been doing his homework of how to work as parents.
I love it.
What do you think? And following up that, he says many of his friends have this freedom and he feels left out and out of the loop because he doesn't have as much access.
Yeah. Well, let's start with that first. So first of all, your kids will say anything to manipulate you into giving them more time. I've heard them all. You know, nobody will like me. They won't pick me to be on their team if I leave them all the time. My friends all do this. That's no different than what we used to tell our parents. My friend gets to go to James Bond films. Why can't I go to a James Bond film? When I wasn't able to, I wasn't allowed, because it was for mature audiences only. So that's nothing new. But what's key here is the description she just read. It sounds like he's a high-performing kid. He's got a balanced life. He's doing his homework. He's got friends. He's spending time with the family. And if your kid's doing that and they're showing maturity, then I would go for it. I'd say, yeah, we'll let you manage it. You can handle it because you're performing and you're having success in all these areas, and not doing it before sleep. So your kids are going to go to college at some point, and they will have unlimited use. And so the earlier you can get them used to handling it unlimited as they get older and show maturity, the better. So in his situation, I'd say, like, man, this kid sounds like he's pretty mature and he's handling things. And it doesn't sound like he has a lot of time to play anyway. With all that he's doing, he probably doesn't have that much time to play. So I'd say, yeah, let's give it a try, honey. But if we see the grades slip, you're not spending time with the family. We call you for family dinner and you won't get off the machine to come to dinner with us. You don't want to go out on a family activity that we always do on the weekend or something. If we see you slide, then we're dialing you back in. So pull them back in. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Now, can I ask a follow-up on
Yeah.
this person? Since you showed us the slides about the 30-minute window and what happens when you go beyond that 30 minutes, would you put any stipulations about that the kid gets to monitor his own use as long as it's in 30-minute chunks?
You could do that. You could say, yeah, let's keep it to 30-minute chunks. Don't know if you'll be able to because when they get on there with their buddies, but you could try to say to chunk it out. See if you can chunk it out. Same with the kids with the social media. See if you can chunk it out. Don't have it with you 24/7. Now, that also means being good role models as parents. So if you're one of those parents that's constantly checking your phone every time it dings, you're not being a good role model for your kid, and they're going to do it too. So you have to demonstrate you can block out social media, or he can block out his video game. But I want to push kids. I always push kids to be as independent as possible, so they don't need to be micromanaged. And if that one example, that kid sounds like he is managing himself pretty well, and I'd say, hey, you go for it. See how it affects you. See if you think you're more grumpy. If we notice you're more grumpy because you're playing too much, we're pulling the chain. Now, if the kid can see that he's getting grumpy or his grades are going down, and he pulls back himself, then you've done your job parenting. Then you've been a great parent, and the kid's doing what he should. I will tell you, my son, who's now in medical school, when he was in high school, he always wanted to have the TV on when he was doing his homework. And he was in all AP classes at Arapahoe. And I'd be like, what? The TV's on during homework time? And he'd look at me and he'd say, I have straight A's. And I'd be like, well, yeah, you do. So, okay, but just this once. But he just liked it in the background. And he wasn't, I bet he couldn't tell you 2/3 of what he ever watched. It was just kind of on the background. He liked that. So I let him do it. My daughter could not do that. She would get so distracted that no homework would ever get done. My daughter could get distracted by anything. Another question?
Yes, I've got another question here. I love the idea of wait till 8th, but
Yeah.
I've heard about the potential downside of not giving an adolescent a smartphone in that they are left out, and that has its own issues. What are
Yes.
your thoughts on that?
Well, I will tell you from my personal experience. I can't tell you from research because I haven't read research on it. But we were going to give our daughter a smartphone at 6th grade, started 6th grade, because that's what all the other parents were doing. My wife's a therapist too. And we saw so much stuff here at the office. And I consulted a school where the drama in the middle school, over half of it is related to social media nowadays. It's just a nightmare, ongoing nightmare. So then I found out about wait till 8th. I did a talk for him. And I said, honey, we're not doing the smartphone till 8th or 9th grade. And she had a fit. I mean, she absolutely was so pissed. She accepted it. Midway through 7th grade, there was some drama going on with the girls in her class. And my daughter was accused of some social media text. And we were able to say, oh, we don't have that. That wasn't her. And she came to us in 8th grade and she said, I'm glad I didn't have it because I would have really gotten in trouble with it. Now, kids still connected with her, but they would email me or they would call the home, just like we used to call the house. Kids could call her. And she had a flip phone until she lost it. But she had a flip phone for a while. So you get them a flip phone. But they'll tell you that they'll be left out of the social scene if they don't have a smartphone. And that is not true. If a friend really wants to be friends with your kid and spend time with your kid, they'll find a way to do it. They'll put that together. All right, now back to the dark side. So there are a lot of predators in the world. A couple other true stories. This was 5 years ago, the first time I heard about it. I just read that there were 1,500 cases of sextortion in our country last year. One was this kid, the first one I was aware of, he was like a senior in high school. He met a girl somehow on social media and he thought it was his girlfriend. And they started communicating with each other for months. And she apparently was 18 and had this whole background story of herself and a photo of herself on social media. And he just was falling for her dramatically. And one day she sends him a topless photo. And she asked him to send a naked picture of himself back to her. Now he's thinking this is a real female and a girlfriend. And he sends a picture back. The response he got was, ha, 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 this isn't Natalia or whoever. We have your naked picture. And we need you to steal your parents' credit card and send us $500, or we're going to post that on Facebook and we'll ruin your life forever. Well, the kid freaked. Now, fortunately, he went to his dad, who had been a detective for the police force. And he called up some of his buddies and they traced it back to the Russian mafia. It was the Russian mafia extorting money out of kids by getting them to show sex pictures. Now, it's also morphed into gaming. So if your kid is gaming with strangers, I would really try to forbid that for your younger ones. You're not going to be able to control with your high schoolers. But for your middle school kids, you tell them you only game with people you know. You don't hook up with people you don't know. But here in Colorado, there was a kid, seventh grader, and somebody he thought was another guy, a kid his age, befriended him. They spent a lot of time texting. We were typing back and forth during these gaming sessions. And then he eventually asked the boy for a picture of himself naked. The kid sent it and got the same kind of response. And thankfully, his parents contacted law enforcement, and they were able to, clear that up. But that's been a growing thing, is trying to get money out of kids and to get their parents' credit card. Got it, Zuzu, thank you, for money. And there's always, any of us as adults, I can't tell you how many spam emails I get every day. It's overwhelming how many spam things you get in these fake scenarios where you're supposed to send them money or something, you'll get millions back. Well, your kids are getting those too. And your middle school kid especially is going to be very vulnerable to that. Or a kid who's lonely or looking for someone to be a friend. Catfishing is the predators who are actually trying to hook up with children and teenagers, and are meeting them online in social media or in gaming, and then meeting them at the park in real life. And there's been numerous people, children sexually assaulted that way. We had a case here in Denver last fall where fortunately the girl had taken her cell phone with her, and the guy threw her in the car and was driving off with her, and she was able to text 911. And as he was assaulting her, just about to assault her behind some building, the police showed up. And she was rescued. But there's plenty of kids who have been sexually assaulted because they hooked up with somebody that they met and thought was their age, and it turned out it wasn't. Now, what I tell kids when I talk to them about this, there are some very evil people in the world that have no feelings for you at all. They just see you as an object to use. It's probably statistically about 1% of the human population has no feelings for anyone else. Fortunately, about half of those people are already in jail. The other half's going to head there. But they are looking for you, and they will use the social media, all these platforms, to try to find you. That last one, revenge porn, we just had a case in Colorado. A woman won the case against a former boyfriend who had pornographic pictures of her. She was an adult. They broke up. She broke up with him. He set him out on the internet, her naked pictures. She took him to court and won. That was about 2 weeks ago. So she got a financial settlement. So revenge porn is illegal too. So if you do have porn, you got some pictures from somebody else, do not use it as a way to threaten somebody or to get revenge. So that's kind of the dark side. In conclusion, please do get the handouts, because I got like 4 pages, and it's pretty. There's all sorts of tips on there. The one thing that's not on the handouts, I have nothing about how to limit access or technology. My son put my password on my computer years ago. My daughter knows my passwords. She sets it up for me. I don't know how to do it. So I'm not the guy to tell you how to restrict technology to your kids. But you'll see all sorts of tips. What I'd focus on with your kids, it's the woman who are about a health perspective. Have a healthcare perspective. And it's about being well-rounded, so healthy use. I will tell you, kids during the pandemic, I had numerous kids who did really well. Some of my guys really did not do well. They were on gaming 6 to 8 hours a night. They were on porn 3 or 4 hours a night. Not good. The kids that did well were the ones who either got a job or started some new hobbies and got involved in activism, joined in on protest. And I saw Cherry Creek students. I was going to physical therapy this summer. I saw a group of Cherry Creek students marching for Black Lives Matter out there on Bellevue. That's the kind of stuff that kids should be doing. And we're looking for kids who can enjoy mindless entertainment. And that's all this stuff is. It's mindless entertainment. I like it sometimes too. I like to be mindless. But you have to have other parts of your life going. And if social media is taking away from your family, your schoolwork, your in-life friendships, working on meaningful things, then it's too much. You're doing too much. And I think about role models for teenagers, those Parkland, Florida high school kids who against with the guns after their school shooting got involved. Greta Thunberg, an environmental teenager. Those are kids who are changing the world. And So mindless entertainment is great as long as it's not interfering with the rest of your life. So please scan that thing so you get the handouts and you can read all that. But Zuzu, it was great as always. I think I went over time as always, but you know, with this webinar, it's so easy. You can just keep talking. People can just sign off at any point. And if there's any final questions, I can take one or two. Or
I am not seeing any questions right now. It looks like we have answered all of our questions. So, Craig, thank you so much for great information. So just to remind people, if you want to get all these tips, you can get this directly from watching the video again, which will be posted up by tomorrow.
Good, so that'll be on there. Excellent.
Yes, and then if somebody else wanted to just take a picture of the QR code, was that at the beginning?
Yes, that's at the beginning, and our websites would have it too, right, Sydney?
Okay, so QR code you can find at the beginning of the presentation, as well as on Craig's website, which is listed right there. Again, we want to thank our 4 platinum sponsors, the 2 that are new to your ears are Induc and the Nectar Group, along with Happy Canyon Flowers and Shealy Camps. So many, many thanks to those outstanding organizations that help us in getting important messages out to you. Craig spoke about a lot of things tonight, and many of these things we will continue the discussion on through the year. Next month is ADHD and addressing those issues. Another one is your child's temperament and parenting, particularly to your child's drive and temperament, personality. Another one that you talked about last is some of the legal issues that are involved with social media, gaming, less so on gaming, videos, and sexting. So that will happen in the spring. So there's a lot of really pertinent issues, some lighter than others, some really heavy. So we invite you to continue being proactive in your family and kids' lives. You never know when this information is going to be really important to you or to your best friend, to your neighbor, to your sister. So thank you for joining us tonight. Go to our website, pnccSD.org, and sign up for our direct emails with our upcoming presentations. So stay warm, and we will look forward to connecting with you again in October.
Thanks, Zuzu. Loved it. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Good night, everybody.
Good night.